Hey, you guys, it's Annie again with Salttown Realty. Okay, I'm going to invite my guest on. He's going to join us on this call, hopefully, to talk about short-term rentals. Here we go. Yay! We did it. So what we have learned is that you have to follow each other to be able to do an Instagram Live together, so everybody else can learn along with us.
Everyone, I'm a noob with Instagram.
So, how do you say your last name, by the way?
It's French, Gauvin.
Gauvin. Okay, so this is Jeff Gauvin. He owns Utah Escapes.
Yes.
It is a business that does short-term rentals. Is it all over Utah or just in Salt Lake?
Throughout Utah, yes. So we've
Utah.
got properties in Moab, Salt Lake City, Park City, and we have a listing in Kanab as well.
Awesome. So yeah, this is going to be a great conversation for folks out there that maybe you own a property and you're thinking about upgrading and you're like, should I sell my old property or should I turn it into a rental? Should it be a long-term rental or a short-term rental? Jeff is an absolute wizard at this. In fact, Jeff has done an analysis of one of my properties of like exactly what he thinks it would cost to run it, what I would bring in each month, what he thinks, you know, everything is. And it was very detailed and great. And by the way, I'm still thinking about it because it's still unoccupied. And so, you know, sometimes managing your own short-term rental can be a lot of work. And so, you know, somebody might want to go for a property manager. So anyway, thank you very much for being on our show today.
Thanks for the invite.
Yeah, and we also just found out that about a decade ago, we went to the same gym in town, and I actually know him and his wife, if not, you know, in an auxiliary way. So always Small Lake City. So Jeff, what I would like to know is like, what is your background? How did you get into this? How long have you been running it? Like, where did you come from? Where did this all come from?
Right. You know, I in hospitality prior. Met my wife working on cruise ships. I was a massage therapist back in the day.
Okay.
Had a good job on the cruise ship, and when we decided to you know go to land, well, I went back to my previous employer, and eventually, you know, we moved to Denver, and that soured on us quickly. We weren't Denver fans, unfortunately. Not what we were looking for. Found an opportunity to run a bed and breakfast in Aspen, and we jumped at that chance, and we lasted one winter in Aspen. Before we bought our own bed and breakfast. So we were very in hospitality with our own bed and breakfast, living on site, and we did that for 8 years. The last 2 years, yeah, on a side note, so we're running a bed and breakfast, but yet, you know, health insurance, all the other things, I picked up a full-time job, and I started selling ski vacations. And I was selling condominiums and luxury homes and all of the ski towns out west, Colorado, Utah. It's kind of my first taste of the vacation rental market. From there, I got an opportunity to join a company in Park City that managed the rentals themselves, luxury high-end. It was Utopian LVH. They recently rebranded to Opulent Vacations. Yeah, Opulent. My choice. But you know, I worked for that company for 10 years and recently separated from that company, but I was their director of revenue.
Okay.
And was intimately involved in really programming houses for success. Whether it's through the pricing strategy, the marketing, photography is key, as you know, same in real estate.
Sure.
You know, photography is really important. But then the operations side of it as well. I was aware, not intimately involved in the operations side, but I think we got a lot of that from running a bed and breakfast anyways. And, you know, my wife was, you know, a housekeeper on a 5-star ship. So she really knew her stuff on the operation end.
Like you can fold the towels into any animal possible. No.
Yeah, she never did the,
Okay.
but we were on a just a very expensive ship, but I don't think they did the swans.
Okay. That's my only ship experience is the towel.
Seen them too. I just haven't seen them in person.
Okay. Nice. Yeah, you guys sound like the dynamic duo of like hospitality and all the things you
Yeah,
can.
she grounds me a bit. I'm the sales marketing guy, and she's the, yeah, you better make sure you can deliver that. And
Yeah,
so it's a good balance.
I love that. So you separated from that company and just decided to go out on your own. Like you felt like you had enough experience in like all of the different realms of, managing properties and kind of, when was that you went out on your own?
2 years ago. Well, actually, I just recently left the company, although I stepped out of that director
Yeah.
role while I built this company on the side. I had a non-compete that I had to negotiate through, so that kind of
Sure.
slowed me a little. So, but yeah, I'm free and clear now. And but I'm sorry, what was your question?
Oh, I was just sort of interested in when you started your company, but now we can
Yeah,
transition
yeah.
into what does your company do? So if somebody came to you, and obviously I already know a little bit of this on my own, but in order to, educate the rest of people, like what exactly do you guys do if somebody was like, okay, I think I'm ready to rent out my property? What do you do from there?
First thing is assess the property. What are the needs of the property? Is it furnished already? Is it photo ready? I mean, really, there's a lot of work that goes up to photo ready, and
Sure.
then once you're photo ready, then it's run with the marketing, run with bookings, and so. But yeah, getting it photo ready is the challenge. That's the heavy lifting. So, and it really just depends on the property and the owner and where they're at. I have some properties. Down here in Moab, it's very common for a home to be sold fully furnished, was a rental, just gets transferred. And
Okay.
so we see that quite a bit where there's not a lot of heavy lifting and we can pretty much just run right from the start
Yeah.
and go. But, there's a lot of decisions that lead up to that photo ready. What beds, what configuration, do you have enough seating at the dining room table? There's a lot of questions that come up in that process. And we've run the bed and breakfast. I own my own vacation rentals. I have one here in Moab. I have another one in Rhode Island. And I've been doing this enough that like personal experience, say I'm an expert, but personal experience, I know what drives bookings, and so I definitely go from that experience.
I think that's what I've been most impressed with. So a little backstory: I'm also good friends with Jeff's like right hand man, and he's told me a lot about the business. And it just seems like there's just this really like innate understanding of like you need a bunk bed in this room, and you need a king bed in this room, and this is how many chairs around the table you need. These guys seem to me like they have it super dialed. And I'm such a DIYer, like I feel like I can do everything by myself, but just in the proposal that you sent me, I was like, actually, I think that I would probably do better if I just use these guys, which is that's not normally how I operate in the world. Usually I'm like, I can probably do it better than
Right.
this. So yeah, it's an impressive proposal that you put together for these properties.
So there is a romantic idea of running your own Airbnb or running a bed and breakfast, those, and I'll tell you, it is a ton of work. So that is, I see some owners that just bought a house and they want to self-manage and really just bought a job.
Seriously, it is a total job.
Buy a job.
Yeah. So, where are you advertising these properties? Like, do you have kind of like your own website, or are you using Airbnb or VRBO? Like, where are these, like, how are people finding out about your properties?
Yes. So the two main platforms, Airbnb and VRBO, you know, superhost status and preferred partner with VRBO, as well as my own website. And it's all tied in with software in the background. So it pushes to all of these platforms at the same time, update pricing on a daily basis.
Really? Wow.
Really, really neat. I mean, they're really hotel style tools that have been brought over for vacation rentals to make sure that you're getting the top dollar for the busy weekends, and then also knowing, this isn't high demand and we probably should lower that price. And so it does that with an algorithm automatically on a daily basis. Mm-hmm. Although I have triggers to pull as it relates to, a property owner's desires for that property, whether it's longer stays or a certain price point. We don't just leave it up to the algorithm entirely. So
do you feel pretty, and this is, I don't know how this question is, but do you feel pretty convinced that like a property owner, because they're paying your fees, mm-hmm. And I don't know if your fees are like standardized enough that you could just say, oh, we charge 8% or 10% or whatever. So
I can tell you the standard in most resort towns, and this isn't, Salt Lake City, because Salt Lake City is an urban center, but most of the resort towns, you're looking at a 30 to 35% management commission, and usually these are always structured on the rent. Okay. So it's based off of the rent generated. My approach and what I've always seen in this industry is that the owner bears all the risk. Mm-hmm. Property managers, I don't want to belittle myself, but I'm not sharing that risk of the mortgage payments and paying the utilities and the other things that come along with, a vacation rental ownership, although I consider myself a partner in this venture with my owners. Yeah. That said, my approach is cost efficiency, because for me, it's all about ROI. And mm-hmm. For my owners, foremost is for my owners. So I do an 80-20 split. Owners get 80% of the rent generated. Mm-hmm. I also try to cap my fees as much as possible. You hear of these, I don't know, my feed is specific to my interest in vacation rentals, but I always get these articles about, all these fees on these different platforms or all these extra rules that hosts are making their guests do. And so I'm very much aware that fees are critical, containing those fees to make properties more successful. So,
and do your fees include the fees that like Airbnb charges and VRBO, or are they all in addition paying those fees?
Yeah, now Airbnb is interesting. Airbnb charges their guest the fee. The host actually only incurs a 3% fee, okay. Which is the same as what credit card processing would cost. Huh. So it's really not, Airbnb's got a friendly model as it relates to how much of the rent you're actually getting. VRBO has a different approach. They offer you a pay-per-booking model or a subscription model. And they recently increased the cost of the subscription, but the annual subscription to have your listing on VRBO is $599. Okay. Which...
That's just a flat fee, like if you have 10 properties or if you have 2 or however. Okay, that's interesting.
It's a flat fee. And so anyone that is fully committed to their vacation rental and for VRBO, you have to do you have to do around 10,000 in rent for that property for that VRBO subscription to be a better model than the pay-per-booking.
Got it.
But generally, we always recommend the annual subscription.
Okay. So just sorry to be clear, those fees are in addition to your fees too.
They are.
Like people, so somebody might elect to only list through you on your website and VRBO, or just Airbnb and your website, not on all of them. Like they'd be electing to advertise on more sites.
Yeah, and I would just say, the trick with vacation rentals, what I see, and really, I just focus on the 2 main players. I don't go to 40 different channels, and it's very easy to do that. But what happens is your reviews go to 40 different places. Mm. And you need those reviews to be really successful on these platforms. So by only being on these 2 major platforms, I know that I'll generate enough reviews for that property on each of those to be successful. And then every market's a little different. So, even in the same market, I'll have one property that will do 60% of the bookings on one platform, but then just down the street, this other property will be on a different platform performing better.
Yeah.
So it's really important to be on both of the majors, in my opinion. And then you'll see direct bookings as well, because there are people that know that if they go direct to the manager, they'll avoid the guest service fees that VRBO and Airbnb do charge.
You ever put like a little blurb at the bottom that's like, you'll get a better deal if you come to my website?
I really try to play nice on those platforms.
Fair enough.
Imagine AI out there to catch me.
Yeah, they probably would. So I'm a realtor. So, I get a lot of people that get excited about, investing in properties. Like, we do a lot of house hacking. I help a lot of like first-time home buyers. And so the idea is like, and I try to get people excited about this too, because it's what I'm excited about. But it's like, okay, you're ready to buy your first home. Let's buy that. This isn't your forever home. So once you've bought that, maybe you rent out a room, somebody pays half your mortgage, you're building up like some equity, you're saving up for a down payment, and then guess what? In a year or however long it takes, you can buy another one. So what do we do with that first one? Do we sell it and use the equity that we had to buy the next one? And a lot of my people are psyched on the idea of renting out or doing short-term rentals. So what advice can you give to those people on when they are identifying their first home that they're probably going to live in? What are some things that they should be thinking of in terms of, will this become a great investment for short-term rental?
I think, of course, there's zoning things to consider. It's interesting because Salt Lake City has a
that's another question.
yeah,
What's the
complaint based. If you're running an Airbnb, it's not enforced. But if your neighbor doesn't like what you're doing and they complain on a consistent enough basis, they could definitely hurt your chances of continuing that Airbnb. And so I think the neighborhood is important. I do tend to like townhomes and condominiums a little bit more for Airbnbs in general, just because they tend to fit a little bit better in the, people already expect to share a space in a way. It may not be, they have their own unit, but they've got neighbors and they know they've got neighbors,
I feel like so many HOAs don't allow it anymore. I've been helping clients lately buy condos, and it's like, it's almost rare to find short-term rentals allowed.
And HOAs are probably for Salt Lake area, they're probably harder than they are harder if there's any written rules there than the zoning. So yeah, definitely something to consider. But I guess what I was getting at is knowing how that property, like knowing if you starting an Airbnb in that property is going to affect your immediate neighbors. I think that's important.
Right. Yeah.
Because that just shut it down entirely. And that, of course you could always just go to long-term rental or go a different route, but it is something to consider when you're making that purchase. So
can I tell you what I think of like the legalities regarding short-term rentals in Salt Lake City, and you can tell me if I'm right or not?
Go. Yes.
Okay. My understanding is that what the city technically says is that if you're going to have a short-term rental, you have to have a business license. And then when you go to sign up for your business license, they go, what's it for? And you go, a short-term rental. And they go, we don't do business licenses for short-term rentals, making it like massively gray area where they say you have to have this thing, but we won't give you this thing. And the folks that I know that have had them, same idea. If the neighbors are cool, then it works out okay. But I've also had friends and colleagues get red tagged because the neighbors complained.
Yep.
And so when people ask me, are short-term rentals allowed in Salt Lake City? I go, kind of.
Yeah, and my take on that is that, they don't want to issue those business licenses because then they've basically legalized your operation. And, later on if they change rules or whatnot, then they have to grandfather or figure out how they, correct that.
Right.
So yes, it is really important that your neighbors are, I think it's best to be upfront with your neighbors. Any that you feel would be concerned. Obviously, it's, some neighbors are really cool about it, and others, it's going to be an issue, and you might save yourself a headache.
What I recommend is like, so legally with mortgage loans and stuff, if you buy a first time home, you have to live in it for at least a year to get that, like, owner occupied rate or whatever. And then at that point, maybe you've met somebody and you have a family and you decide to upgrade a house, da da da. But I go, for a year, bake cookies regularly for everybody in your neighborhood. So that way, if you end up deciding to short-term rental it, they already love you and they already think it's great. And then I'd also, just to like push you guys, I'd say hire a professional to do this thing, because I know that the way that you guys run a business is you're specifically looking for good renters, like not people that are going to be in there partying and a ton of cars and making a bunch of noise and annoying the neighbors. We're looking for like high quality candidates. And I know that that's something that you guys lean towards.
No, it's very important. There's obviously a lot of liability of getting the wrong guest in your house. So that's something we take very, very seriously, making sure that we dial that in. We also, we actually do have a homeowner in downtown Salt Lake that, we've met with the neighbors and discussed and gone through our procedures, because it was a concern to them, and now we've actually turned a couple to be interested in potential Airbnb-ing their residences. So I think sometimes it's just having that conversation. I think, and obviously having great relationships with your neighbors, and as a property manager, I think it's we really do our best to make sure the guest understands what's allowed and what's not allowed. And so, really setting it up for success. And you don't want to have a house that looks like a party house. We don't advertise party houses.
This is
just
a
not
great place to have a kegger party, everybody.
Right?
It's like said no manager ever. I want to wrap it up, but I do want to know if you have any suggestions for people in terms of layout of the house. Are there anything that people should be thinking about in terms of layout that would make a great short-term rental?
Layout wise, open floor plans. I mean, I think what people are looking for when they're looking at real estate listings, same thing people are looking for when they're looking for their next Airbnb. I like to, compelling photography. So when they're buying stuff, it's really important not to create a yard sale. You need to have a theme. Like, the yard sale look doesn't sell. So you really, if you can tie rooms together and really, even if you go with a designer to get that, it will pay off. But compelling photography is really what the end game is. Now, every property is going to be different, right? Some will have views, and that's what you're going to sell. Others are going to be all about the location. It may not have any windows, but it's in the right location. But yeah. I think you just really have to think, like, if you were traveling to Salt Lake, would you want to stay at that property? I mean, you just have to add on.
Yeah, no doubt. Well, I try to keep these things under half an hour, but I feel like I could ask you questions for the next hour and a half, honestly, because, like I said, I had you do a property for me, and it's obviously something that's always on my mind. But I personally am like very sold on the idea of having a professional do it, as like you guys we've got a few people on the call here, but on the call, as you guys have heard, like this is somebody who has dedicated his life to hospitality and management and thinks very deeply about like all of the different aspects of it, things that would be really difficult, I think, to manage on your own. So I'm feeling like pretty sold on that idea. And that's coming from somebody who's so DIY, who always thinks I can do a better job than everyone else. So I so appreciate having you on here. I don't have any questions from the audience here, but sometimes there are questions that pop up once I put it on my feed, and I'll be sure to send you those. And then you guys should all follow Utah Escapes, and especially in case you're thinking about, potentially renting out your property. So yeah, thank you so much for joining me, and especially, somebody asked, how can people reach out? You have a website?
Yes, Utah-escapes.com.
Okay.
So
that's not already on your bio on your Instagram. You should put that on there, because I know you're a little new to Instagram. So definitely put that on. People can find you. And yeah, I so appreciate you coming on, and especially last minute. And hopefully we can garner some more business for you through this as well.
Thanks,
So,
Annie.
okay.
Really appreciate
Thanks,
it.
Jeff.
Thank you. Bye.